Everyone talks about debt like it's one thing, but a person carrying $4,000 in credit card debt and a person carrying $220,000 in medical school loans are not living the same life. They are not feeling the same thing when they open their banking app. They are not making the same compromises, losing the same sleep, or staring down the same timeline. Debt is not one thing. It's a spectrum, and where you fall on that spectrum determines what your daily life actually looks like, what decisions are available to you, what doors quietly close, and how far the weight of it reaches into every corner of your existence. This video is a map of that spectrum, 4 levels, real numbers, and an honest account of what life looks like at each one. Wherever you are on this, something in here is going to hit close to home. This is the level nobody panics about, and that is exactly the problem. At this range, you have got a credit card balance sitting around $3,000 that you've been meaning to pay off for 8 months. Maybe a personal loan you took out for a car repair that one time. A store card you opened for the discount and forgot to close. A few hundred left on a medical bill from that urgent care visit you put on plastic, because who carries cash to a clinic? None of it feels like an emergency. None of it keeps you up at night in the dramatic way debt is supposed to. It just sort of sits there, like a low hum in the background of your finances that you've gotten so used to, you don't even hear it anymore. And that normalization is where this level does its real damage. Because the average American household carries about $6,000 in credit card debt, which sounds manageable right up until you look at what it actually costs. The average credit card interest rate in the United States right now is sitting above 20%. On a $6,000 balance, making only the minimum payment every month, you will spend over 5 years paying that off, and hand the credit card company somewhere around $4,000 in interest on top of the original balance. You will pay $10,000 to borrow $6,000. And the whole time, it will feel fine, because the minimum payment is only $120 a month. And that's not nothing, but it's not devastating either. This is the minimum payment trap, and it is one of the most effective wealth extraction mechanisms ever designed, because it never triggers your alarm system. Marcus was here at 23, fresh out of college, first job, first credit card, first taste of buying things slightly before he could afford them. He told himself it was temporary. He'd pay it off when things settled down, but things did not settle down. The balance went from $2,000 to $4,500 in about 14 months without him buying anything extravagant. Patterns you build around debt at $0 to $15,000 are the patterns you will carry with you into higher debt levels if you get there. The person who learns to ignore a $4,000 balance at 23 is the same person who will find a way to rationalize a $60,000 balance at 31. The debt isn't the crisis at this level. The habits are. The fix here is not complicated. It is just uncomfortable. Stop making minimum payments. Attack the highest interest balance first. Cut the card up if you have to. The math at this level is still salvageable with relatively straightforward decisions. It just requires admitting that the low hum you've been ignoring is actually a problem. But the next levels of debt are not to be messed with. Welcome to Marcus's permanent residence. This is the range where roughly 40% of American student loan borrowers sit. This is the 4-year degree sweet spot. The place where you did the thing you were told to do, took on what everyone assured you was a reasonable investment in your future, and came out the other side with a balance that is large enough to reshape every financial decision you make for the next decade, but small enough that nobody around you takes it particularly seriously. You are not in a crisis, but you are also not fine. At $35,000 in student loan debt, your standard 10-year repayment plan puts your monthly payment somewhere around $380 to $400. That is not catastrophic on paper. It is a nice car payment. Except at the end of 10 years, you don't own anything you can drive. Now take that $400 a month and put it next to everything else Marcus is paying. Rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, transportation. After taxes, after living expenses, after the loan payment, there is not much left. Not enough to build a real emergency fund. Not enough to invest. Not enough to save a down payment on a home within any timeline that makes psychological sense for a person in their late 20s. And that is where this range really shows its teeth. Because $15,000 to $50,000 in debt sits at a very specific and very cruel intersection. It is high enough to materially damage your financial life. It delays homeownership by an average of 7 years according to research. It reduces retirement savings significantly in the years when compound interest would do the most work. It forces you into a risk-averse professional life because you cannot afford to quit a job you hate or sit unemployed for 3 months while you figure out your next move. But it is low enough that the culture around you treats it as basically normal. Oh, everyone has student loans. Yeah, it's tough, but you'll get through it. Just budget better. The gap between someone who graduated debt-free and someone who graduated with $40,000 in loans is not just $40,000. It is every investment that money could have been making. It is the down payment on the house bought 5 years earlier that appreciated. Over a 30-year period, the actual wealth gap created by that initial difference in starting position can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. Marcus is still here. Every few months he logs in and looks at the balance. It goes down slower than it feels like it should. At this level, the conversation changes. Below $50,000, debt is something you manage, something you work around, something you factor into decisions. Above $50,000, debt starts to become something closer to a defining feature of your financial life. Think about who lives in this range. Graduate degree holders, people who combined undergraduate debt with a master's program, people who went through a financially rough period where consumer debt compounded on top of existing student loans, people who went to law school at a mid-tier institution and are now making $65,000 a year at a small firm wondering how this happened. At $80,000 in debt, the standard repayment monthly payment is somewhere in the range of $850 to $900 a month. That is not a car payment. That is rent in a mid-sized American city, paid in addition to actual rent, for 10 years. At this level, homeownership is not delayed. It is effectively removed from the table for most single-income earners. The debt-to-income ratio required to qualify for a mortgage in most markets does not work when you have $900 going to loan payments every month before the bank even looks at your salary. And if you somehow do qualify, the remaining budget for actually living is stretched to feel less like financial responsibility and more like punishment. Retirement contributions at this level become almost theoretical. Sure, you know you should be putting money away. Every financial advisor, every YouTube video, every well-meaning LinkedIn post tells you to start early and let compound interest do the work. But compound interest requires something to compound. And when the monthly payment on your debt leaves you with $200 in discretionary income at the end of the month, the Roth IRA is not the priority. Staying solvent is the priority. And then there is the career trap. This is the part that does not get talked about enough. At $50,000 to $150,000 in debt, you cannot afford to take professional risks. You cannot leave a stable but soul-destroying job to try something new. You cannot take the lower-paying position at the more interesting company. You cannot start the business that has been sitting in the back of your head for 3 years. The debt has made you risk-averse by design, not because you lack ambition or courage, but because the math doesn't allow for a wrong move. The psychological weight at this level is measurable. Studies consistently link student loan debt in the $50,000 to $150,000 range with significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and what researchers call debt stress, a chronic, low-level psychological burden that affects decision-making, relationships, and physical health. But even at this level, you still could have a life. There's always a chance things can somehow work. Maybe you get promoted or you start a side hustle that turns into a profitable business. But the next range of debt is honestly scary to even talk about. But let's get into it. Now we are somewhere else entirely. At $150,000 and above, the normal rules of personal finance advice stop applying. The Dave Ramsey budget spreadsheet does not fix this. The cut your subscriptions and cook at home content does not touch this. Who is here? Medical students, dental students, law school graduates from anything other than a top 10 school who did not land a big law salary, people who stacked an MBA on top of existing undergraduate debt, people who went back to school during an economic downturn and borrowed to cover living expenses on top of tuition. The average medical school graduate in the United States finishes with somewhere between $200,000 and $250,000 in student loan debt. Before the first paycheck as an attending physician, which does not arrive until after a residency that pays somewhere around $60,000 a year for 3 to 7 years, depending on the specialty. So you have a person with $220,000 in debt making $60,000 during residency. The interest alone on that balance at federal graduate loan rates is generating $15,000 to $17,000 in new debt every single year. Every year of residency, the balance grows. And doctors are the good news story at this level. At least the income eventually gets there for most of them. Law school graduates who did not land in corporate law, the ones who went into public interest work or joined small firms or moved back to smaller markets, are carrying $150,000 to $200,000 on salaries of $55,000 to $80,000. The math does not work. It was never going to work. And the schools that took their tuition money knew the math did not work and admitted them anyway. But here is the paradox that makes this level uniquely strange. Many people in the $150,000 and above range eventually reach incomes that look impressive from the outside. The doctor making $250,000. The lawyer making $180,000. The MBA who landed a corporate strategy role at $140,000. On paper, these are high earners. In reality, many of them are functionally broke because the debt follows the income. Lifestyle inflation is not just vanity at this level. It is social and professional expectation. The attending physician is expected to live like an attending physician. The corporate lawyer is expected to dress, live, and present in a way that matches the credential. The external pressure to spend at a level that matches the title is real and relentless. And so you get the bizarre situation of people earning $200,000 a year who have no savings, a six-figure loan balance they are barely making progress on, a mortgage that stretched the limit of what they could qualify for, and a lifestyle that looks successful from every external angle while being financially precarious underneath. The $150,000 and above tier is where debt becomes a life-defining condition, not a setback, not an inconvenience, a condition. And the cruelest part is that most of the people here made what looked like ambitious, aspirational choices. They went to professional school. They pursued advanced credentials. They were told the investment would pay off. The brochure just did not mention what happens when it doesn't. Drop a comment and tell us about what level you're in, what it feels like, and what's your plan if you have one. We'll see you on the next one.